Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode in physics with Brain Cell Bomb. That's not entirely false, actually. So, Avengers Endgame spoilers for all who are. Oh, if you read the title, I kind of already spoiled it, kind of. So, anyways, in Avengers Endgame, the Avengers need to go back in time to get the stones, right? And I've had a lot of people ask me, like, because I'm just this all-seeing god of Marvel. Apparently, I will perfectly take that name and value it. Anyway, so they've asked me, Brian, how does this time travel work? You're a nerd, a Marvel nerd, you should know. How come when they took the stones out, or when Loki disappeared, they didn't die or whatever? And it's like, because we have this thought process in our head of how Back to the Future works is how all time travel works, when really, how Avengers Endgame works is actually more grounded in science, if that makes sense. But, they try to explain it in the movie a couple times, but they kind of explain it, but as a joke. Like, oh, let's say something really fast and really smart, so it sounds like we know what we're talking about, which they do when you actually sit down and think about what they're talking about. But then they ended off with Ant-Man making a joke about it, which was a funny joke. I'm not saying it wasn't funny, but they need to explain it a bit more. And having 5 minutes for them to sit down and write it all out, that would have helped the movie. I was even kind of confused when I was first watching it, but then once I walked out of the theater, I kind of got it. Anyway, so I have a piece of paper and some pencil here. Now, for example, okay, first, let's discuss how Back to the Future does time travel and how we have it in our minds time travel works. Okay, time in those worlds is a line, right? It's just a straight line. Okay, and then let's say this, at the beginning of the line, is 1955, like in the Back to the Future movie, and at the beginning is 1985, right? Just like this. I really wish I had it more figured out. Okay, and then let's say you have an apple. You have an apple sitting right here. So in 1985, the apple is still going to be sitting on the desk, right? The apple's still going to be sitting on the desk. But if you then go back in time and then move the apple, let's say you moved it from one desk to another. Like that, you went back in time, moved the apple from one desk to another. Then 1985, that apple is going to be moved to the other desk. So basically, whatever you do to your past affects your future, which that's not correct. That's not how the MCU does time travel. There's this theory, a real-world grounded theory called the multi-universe theory, where basically there are infinite numbers of different universes that are coexisting at once. So let's say you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, you got two cereals, Cocoa Puffs or Frosted Flakes. Well, you grabbed Frosted Flakes, but then, oops, split timeline just was created where everything else is the same except for the fact that you chose Cocoa Puffs. Is that making sense? Is it like an actual theory? I kind of believe in it, kind of. And there's just like 1,000 different branches of every time a decision or anytime something happens, something else happens in an alternate universe. Where'd my pencil go? There it is. Alright, so basically, this is the Marvel timeline, right? So, they're in the year 2023. Right, okay, so they're in the year 2023, but then they go back to the year 2012, okay, to get one of the stones, right? They go to the year 2012, and in the year, they screw a bunch of things up, and basically one of the big things that happens is Loki gets the Tesseract and shoots off. But when they go back to the year 2023, Loki's still dead. Like, everything exactly happened, but see, now once they went back to 2012, normal, and then Loki. So now a branch timeline has been created where everything here still happened in their timeline. See, when they got the stone and Loki left, this timeline was created, but their timeline stays the same. So, I feel like I need to be there with y'all if y'all actually want some explaining. I know I'm kind of not explaining right. Basically, that's what happened. So now there's a timeline where Loki is like still alive off in space, still evil somewhere. And then in the year 2014, so let's do 2014, Thanos then comes to the year 2023 and he dies. So now, boom, branch timeline, Thanos is dead. So now in 2014 there's a new branch timeline where Thanos is dead. But that timeline is not with this one, and that timeline is also not with the Loki timeline. There's like an infinite numbers of different timelines of different realities that are happening. And the reason why in the one scene where Bruce Banner and the Ancient One are explaining it, they're like, oh, when you take the Infinity Stone out and then it goes all black, they try to explain it there. But basically, space-time continuum won't work without the Infinity Stones, so they have to put them exactly right back where they put them. Now, let's explain one other thing. The whole Captain America thing, right? Okay, that's kind of complicated, but not really. Okay, so you have the normal timeline. Right here, this line is a timeline where, okay, so you got the year 2023 down at the end of the line here, right? And then over here is the 40s. I'm not exactly sure what year he left. It's the 40s, right? That's the beginning of the timeline. So basically, Captain America dropped off all the stones, and then he went back to the 40s in the normal timeline, but then when he arrived back and lived with Peggy Carter, a whole separate timeline was created where, let's just call it Steve and Peggy timeline. I can't spell Peggy. Where the Steve and Peggy timeline was created, right? So now there's a separate timeline running, coexists. He's on a totally different timeline. But then we see Old Man Cap at the end of the movie, and you're like, how are we seeing Old Man Cap if he's in a different timeline? Because basically, alright, so at the end here is 2023. As you can see, at the top there is the year 2023, but in this timeline, and this is the year 2023 in this timeline. So basically, Steve went from his universe is 2023 to our universe is 2023. He just time hopped like that. He used the same thing. That's what the director said happened. He went, whoop, and now he's in our 2023 as an old man because he lived his whole life. Now, you're probably saying, well, why does it seem like he only lived like a second there? Because when he went right to the point of where he went back. That's why he's Old Man Cap. So, if you're still confused, go watch some other videos. Please subscribe. I did my best explaining the complicated mess of the MCU time. It's really not complicated when you sit down and think about it. It takes someone like, you know, your host to explain it for you. You're welcome for explaining it. Please subscribe. I hope this video does pop through my anime tier list. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe for more. I'm going to be doing a rant video about why I think Black Widow shouldn't get a movie. Thank you. Subscribe. Video over. Time travel rocks.